IBC.com. You'll see I'm not alone in the studio today. We mentioned it last week here that the International Ballet Competition is upon us here in Mississippi. And joining us today is the only Mississippi representative dancing, Mr. Alexei. He is a Hattiesburg native, and he's competing in the men's junior category. And I'm going to let you say your last name, Alexei.
Hi, my name is Alexei Orohovsky.
Yes, which is not Southern. So what's your family's roots?
So my mom is Russian, but she was adopted at a very, very young age, and so she grew up in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And my dad is Ukrainian and lived there for most of his life, and then married my mom and came here. So that's where I grew up. I grew up here. And
so when did you start dancing?
I started dancing very young, like around the age of 4 or 5 is when I started taking my first classes. And I grew up with my parents doing that, so that's how I got into it.
So mom and dad both were into dance?
Yes, they both have their own studio in Hattiesburg, Mississippi called South Mississippi Ballet Theater. And so
you didn't stand a chance?
Not at all.
So that's why the YouTube video I think I saw of you, and you're a tiny tot with a tambourine, and I was like, who gets their kid to be able to do that? So okay, that makes more sense.
Yes.
But you obviously just naturally gravitated to the craft. I mean, do you remember a time, Alexei, without dance in your life?
I do, actually, because my parents were very open about it. They were like, if you want to dance, it's up to you. If you don't want to dance, that's completely fine, but it's going to be your choice. And so I remember I was kind of on the fence about it for a while, and then finally at one point I was like, this is something I want to do. And from that point on, it was kind of just nonstop. I really put a lot of time into it.
Well, you're 16, so when you say a lot of time, I mean that's pretty much the majority of your life at this point. So, what age were you when you said, you know what, I'm gonna take this a little bit more serious?
Well, I was kind of in and out of classes, and then at around, I'd say age 9 is when I started putting more time into it and kind of focusing more on dancing. And then at age, I think 11 or 12, that's when I really was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to buckle down and do this. And really, this is something I want to do for my career. And so from that point on, I trained. And then a year after, when I was 14, I moved to Dallas, Texas to train full time.
And now you're where training? Is that where your training still is in Dallas?
No,
you're across the pond.
Yes. So last year I trained in Dallas, Texas with Elite Classical Coaching in Texas. And I was there for about a year and a half. And then this year I've moved to Stuttgart in Germany. And I've been training there the past 8 months with the John Krenko School. It's a very elite ballet school in Europe.
You're so young to move across. Was that scary?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, definitely moving by yourself at age 15 is a little bit nerve-wracking. But it was good that I got to move to Texas first because, it's only a 2-hour plane ride from my parents, and so I could see them a lot more. And so that kind of got me adjusted to living by myself with a host family. And then from then on, I moved to Stuttgart, and it was very easy riding from there. So I kind of got used to the environment very quickly.
When people think of professional dance or international ballet competitions, they don't often think of Mississippi, which is why I think it's a good thing that we have you here talking about it, and then having someone from Mississippi represented there. But it obviously, there's a point within our state, I guess, within the dancing community where you do have to go on, or would that be for any dancer in any state? You would eventually have to move up, move on, or move overseas to go to that next sort of level in terms of dance culture and opportunity.
Right. So, I mean, the U.S. is also a very young country. In Europe, ballet has originated from Europe as well. And so it's had a lot more time, a lot more history. There's a lot more companies there with governments funding it. But you don't necessarily have to dance in Europe if you want to go to an elite level. There are plenty of American companies that also have professional level training. For example, American Ballet Theater in New York City Ballet Theater in New York, Ballet West in Texas, I believe. That could be very wrong. Houston Ballet in Texas, San Francisco Ballet in California. Those are all very professional companies with a very good company and good directorship. But they're all American-founded companies by American dancers.
You bring up a good point, Alexei. I mean, you think of it as dancing is absolutely a sport, that you all have competition, but then also it's something you can do as your profession. But we are still a baby country compared to other places. Where is the pinnacle of ballet right now, or in the world? Where is where they would consider they just breed them there?
Uh, so this is kind of a complicated question because, like a lot of people think ballet, they think of Russia. However, that's kind of a messy situation right now. A lot of dancers are moving away from Russia. Some are staying there if they're already from Russia. But I mean, ballet originally came from like King Henry the 14th, I believe, or King Louis the 14th.
Don't ask me.
Started that in Italy, I believe. And so that is where it started and kind of spread outwards through Europe as it developed more and more. And I would say right now, kind of the main countries that ballet art is developing is like Russia, Germany, France, England, and America. Those seem like the main places.
Well, it just also shows that there's such opportunity for dancers in terms of professional careers. I mean, it's something you don't necessarily hear about. So, like, say, as a professional dancer, I mean, I don't want to say, like, what is your job? I know it's dancing. But, like, I'm not that slow. But, you would work for a company and then go and then do performances? Like, how does a professional ballet dancer make a living?
Right. So, I'm going to talk about, I mean, most companies as a whole, the way it works is that you have, like, ranks in the company. You have the quarter ballet, which is kind of like the most, like, that's where you start in the company. Mm-hmm. That's where most dancers start, and you dance, like, all the core roles, which is basically all, like, the group roles. So it's kind of like dancing in a group. And then you have, from there, you have demi-soloist, and then you have soloist, and then you have principal, which is the highest role in most companies. And so
solo.
Yes.
Or a duo.
Yes, and principal dancers normally get all of the main roles. They get the most difficult parts. And so as a dancer, basically the way you make a living is like you're in the company, you're learning these ballets, full length, like 2-hour, 2.5-hour ballets, and then you perform them for an audience. And, you know, like, for example, this is also somewhere like an aspect where America and Europe differ greatly. But in America, they normally tend to do less performances and spend more time like working towards those performances. Whereas in Europe, you could have like a performance every other day for like 4 months. So it's kind of just like nonstop. So I guess it really just depends. But I mean, as a dancer, yeah, you'll learn these ballets, you'll perform them, and then you get like monthly paycheck. And that's kind of how, depending on how well you do, that's how you get promoted and whatnot.
Is it a lot of travel?
It can be. There are touring companies. There are companies that will tour from country to country, and there are some that'll just stay in place in their home country.
The one thing at my limited brain, I'm thinking like Broadway, but like not for singers, you know, not for like that kind of like whatever sort of else. Well, I find it like fascinating. I mean, because if you don't live in that world or you don't necessarily, you know someone who does, it feels like a foreign concept that you could do this for a living, but also compete at such a high level at such a young age. I mean, it's 16. But what's sort of that mean age for a professional dancer? I mean, do you have any 40-year-olds out there, or is it a little bit younger than that?
Yeah, so ballet is definitely not a long career. It ends very shortly because it is it's entirely like reliant on your body and how it develops. So it differs from person to person. You know, most people go into companies at around age 18, 19. Some will go in at like 22, 23. It really depends. And then some can retire as early as like 36, 37, and some can keep dancing all the way to like age 50 if they're lucky.
What you're telling me is there's time for me. There's still time.
Yes.
Oh, you're being kind. I'm very aware that they tell me all the time they can teach people to sing and dance, but I think I am past my prime of being able to do what some of the things you and the other competitors are going to be able to do and show out there on the stage at the International Ballet Competition. I know your opening ceremonies, Alexei, are tonight, but the competition, when does it take place?
I think we register today. The opening ceremony, I think, is either on Saturday or Sunday. And then
this coming up weekend.
Yes. And then that's also when the competition starts. I think on Sunday is the first performances.
Do you know how many dancers are coming into Jackson?
I don't know specifically. Probably around 40 or so, if not more. But I would say that's about how many there are.
All right, we've got plenty more with Alexei coming up next. And also, you can catch Good Things in podcast form wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you missed the episode where we talked to the authors of the new biography on Thalia Mara, I think I got it right, Miss Thalia Mara, you can go back and catch that in podcast form. But it's thanks to her that we have the International Ballet Competition here in Mississippi, her and many others, but she was very much a spearhead of it. It was first here in 1979, and then I think every 4 years, 82, 86, 90, 94, 98, 02, 06, 24. I got to keep going now, Alexia. 2010, 14, and now 23, it's back. And so how do you describe the International Ballet Competition to people who are like, I don't get it, it's every 4 years. Is it like the Olympics? Is it in the ballet world?
It's very similar to kind of like an Olympics-esque sort of competition. I mean, there are the 4 main international ballet competitions. There's the USA International Ballet Competition. There's the Moscow International Ballet Competition. There's the Helsinki International Ballet Competition and the Varna International Ballet Competition. However, Varna, its last noted appearance was in 2018, and they haven't had funding for it since because of like COVID and whatnot. So we're not sure if or when that'll make a return. So it's very similar to an Olympics because you have tons of people from like different countries and nationalities all coming to one place to compete, and it happens every so often, and it's very, very, elite in that sense. So,
and you mentioned so how do you get chosen? Because you're invited, right? Like I know you have to sort of win or work your way, obviously, up with the talent, but how do you get the ticket here?
So there's an audition process. There are two ways to get into this competition. The first is I think audition through a video process. And so you send in a video of like 2 variations that you're competing or something like that. And then from there, they go through all the listings and they decide who they want to, who they think is the best and who they want to compete. And the other way to get in, which is the way I was able to get in, is if you have won the top prize at one of 4 competitions. Youth America Grand Prix, which is the one that I won at. I won the Youth Grand Prix Award. Helsinki International Ballet Competition, Moscow, or Varna. So if you win the top prize at one of those 4 competitions, you have an automatic invite to USA International Ballet Competition.
And were you like, yes, I'm coming home to do this?
Yes. I had to get permission from my director at the John Crago School, but we explained the situation and he was okay with it. And so I've been working with my school for this competition, and so I was allowed to come here and compete.
So as an athlete, how do you compete? I know that sounds silly, but like, does everybody learn the same dance and then who does it best, or do you bring your own sort of like a singing competition? You pick your vocals and you change them up and then you perform in terms of that way. Is everything different?
It's kind of a mix actually for this competition. Some other competitions differ. For USA IBC, the way it works is you have for round 1 and round 3, those are the ones you perform your classical variations. You have a list of variations that you can choose from. And so for round 1, you have this one giant list and you pick 2 variations from the list that you compete. You can't choose anything outside of the list. And then for round 3, you have another 2 variations, except you have 2 lists this time, and you have to pick 1 from each list. So that's kind of the way it works. At Helsinki, the one I competed at Helsinki last year, you could pick any 4 variations you wanted, and you competed them in round 1 and round 3. And then for Youth America Grand Prix, you could pick any 1 or 2 variations you wanted. But this one is off of a list.
Is variations meaning like a dance that somebody would else already know, or is it like a song? Like, what is a variation?
So a variation is it's kind of like a solo. Mm-hmm. That's like ranges from like 50 seconds anywhere to like 2.5 minutes. The girls' variations are normally longer than the men's variations.
That's not fair.
Well, okay.
On both ways.
Well, we have different things in our variations. So guys has a lot more tricks, a lot more stamina, whereas girls, it's of course very, very hard, but it has different things, and normally it's spread out through a longer time. So. And they come from ballets, full-length ballets, and these ballets will have these solos in them.
Got it.
And so you pick them from the ballets. So they're already choreographed like hundreds of years ago. and then you just pick them from those.
Oh my God, I was today years old to realize that. So like ballets are very much similar to like classical music. It was written a long time. Different
Yes.
people play them. So it's like you have these ballets and then just
Yes. If anyone knows Tchaikovsky, he composed a lot of the music for a lot of famous ballets like Swan Lake, Nutcracker, Sleeping Beauty. He was the composer for all of those, along with Marius Petipa, who choreographed all of them.
So those are the classicals. Are there people out there writing new ballets and creating new things, or is that kind of like it's a traditional sport?
Yes, people create new ballets, but it's more, I would say, neoclassical. It's kind of in the same way that people now can create like classical sounding music, but it's technically not classical music because it's not from that time period, if you understand what I mean. So yes, people still create new works, neoclassical, contemporary ballets, but there aren't any more classical ballets being made because it's not in that time period anymore.
I am learning so much today, as I hope you are. I mean, listening to Alexei, he will be competing at the International Ballet Competition. It's kicking off this coming up weekend here in Jackson. I think it's super cool that we are a host of that, one of four. When you're talking, because I'm sure the ballet community is probably small, even though it's international, right? Like kind of like a small town. What do people think about coming to have to know Jackson, Mississippi? Are they asking you questions about Mississippi, or do they just know it's just another stop on their international, sort of checklist? Or I'm curious.
People have asked me questions like what it's like, whatnot, and I've been very happy to answer those questions as it's my hometown. But a lot of times that you visit lots of places, so it just depends on whether or not you're interested. So.
Do you take them to eat somewhere? Like, do you give them good barbecue? Are y'all allowed to have fried catfish? What's on the
Yes.
A glass of sweet tea? I mean, do you rock their world and their taste senses when they
Absolutely. Absolutely. Lots of my friends that I've known growing up with are competing at this competition. Because I know a lot of the competitors, especially the U.S. competitors competing here, because I've met them at previous competitions. But yeah, I've definitely answered a few questions about Mississippi and shed light.
And it's hard. You'd have, being from here, it's like just come visit, and then and then it sort of makes sense sort of for itself. But yes, I'm glad to hear that you're at least taking them for a good either blue plate special or catfish or whatever. If you need some recommendations downtown, we'll make sure that we get those sort of for you. Okay, so the variations. What will you be competing in?
So in round one, I will be competing the Paquita variation, male variation from Paquita. And why did I just forget what I'm competing? Paquita and Flames of Paris, male variation from Flames of Paris. In round two, I will be competing one contemporary solo. And in round three, I will be competing Ali's variation from Le Corsaire, Nutcracker Princess variation from the Nutcracker,
and the Nutcracker,
and another contemporary
feel
piece.
Cultured now.
Yes.
But okay, so you picked those. Have you just been working your tail off practicing? Is that now, is that the next, once you pick it, you have to learn it and then perfect it to come and sort of perform it? Is that?
Yes. And also, too, because, some variations I have competed before. For example, last year I competed Le Corsaire and I competed Paquita. But Nutcracker and Flames of Paris are both new variations to me, and so I've definitely practiced them a lot more. But yeah, I guess it's something that you just pick up and then you start practicing more and more and more and over again and kind of just perfecting all the little details and stylistically your arms and your head and your legs, where to go, kind of all that stuff. And so it just over time you kind of get to the bare roots of it and try and master every single little detail.
I know what I do know enough about ballet is the devil's in the details. When you're being judged, what are those minor things that get you little dings? You mentioned what are they?
Well, it also again depends from variation to variation because they come from full-length ballets, and so you have to understand the artistry and what you're doing in it and make sure you're perfecting the personality of the variation. But it can come down to anything from your hand placement, where your fingers are, how your body moves, your head, your upper body, your torso, how high you're jumping, your knees, your feet. So many small stuff can play such a big impact in how a variation looks and feels. It's very, very, very detailed, and it takes tons of time to get that in muscle memory and to remember all of it.
Yeah, I am impressed. I am more impressed, which I feel like if you come out and you see any of it, you'll be impressed too. But we've got a little bit more with Alexei coming up next. You'd have to come to Central Mississippi to Jackson to see the International Ballet Competition. It happens every 4 years. We've got one of the dancers with us, Alexei. He's a Hattiesburg native, but he's the only Mississippi representative. And Alexei, if I'm correct, you are one of 3 Mississippians that's ever competed?
I think 3,
or they're you and 3, but there's a very small number.
Yes, there's either 3 of us or me and 3, one of the 2.
Do you know any of the other ones?
I know one of them. I think his name was Jared, and he also danced with my parents for a little bit. But besides that, no, I don't.
Within the dance community that is here in Mississippi, because I know it's pretty strong, even though it's a small-knit community. You mentioned your parents run a studio there in Hattiesburg and have danced. How exciting is it to the Mississippi dancers that there's a Mississippian in the International Ballet Competition?
I mean, I hope it's pretty exciting.
I think it is.
Yes. I mean, it's nice to be a native here and to know that I'm able to compete in this competition because, I've seen it growing up and I've heard about this competition. And so me finally being at the age and being able to compete in such an event like this is very exciting for me and, being able to really compete like this.
Because 2014 was the last time it was here. I think it got
2018.
Or 2018. Okay, so I was thinking, did COVID mess anything up? You would have been what? Then you would have been 12. So you would have been, sort of a lot younger in that way. What's on the line? So if you win, you walk away with gold. We're going ahead and throwing that out there. We have good premonitions here on good things. So we're sending you good vibes. But what's on the line if you win?
Well, I think if you win the Grand Prix award that goes for both the senior and junior category for both men and female, you win $20,000. And if for my category, the junior, if you win gold, I think you win $11,000.
Not a bad weekend's worth of work.
Not at all.
Not a bad weekend's work at all. When you're working where you're at now, are you training? So you're training right now. You had to step away from training to coming. Are you used to dancing in groups for your performances, or are you used to being a solo on the stage? Because I would assume mentally that's 2 different sort of
very different
mentalities.
Yes, there are 2 entirely different skill sets. Some soloists cannot work in a group. Some groups cannot work as a soloist. Not to say that any is harder than the other, but they're 2 just very, very different things. So as of right now, where I'm training, I'm actually not really training that much. I'm more just training my classwork and my base technique and getting better. That's what the school is for. And so by doing that, every day in classes, just working on those details and trying to get better overall. And so when I can come out and do these variations here, when I compete, that base work that I train every day, that's what's going to help me get better. So
when we see flashes of dancers on TV, or maybe we get the opportunity to go to a ballet, or we come out and see and support the International Ballet Competition, you will make it look so easy. You will make it look like, oh, he's just flying through the air and twirling around. But the amount of athleticism that it takes and strength and conditioning, I feel like gets underrepresented in the dancing world in general. I mean, because your dance is only, 50 seconds to 2 minutes for the girls, 2.5 minutes, but you guys leave there exhausted. Right.
I think a great way to put it is more just ballet is an art form that you have to train for like a sport. It's very, very intense on your body. The amount of work that we do. There's this funny story actually with my parents. My parents' old studio was right in front of the Oak Grove high school football team. And one day they actually came and took a class and they were like, I don't understand how you guys do this sort of thing. It's so difficult. And it kind of just puts into perspective, of course it's different muscles, different training that you have to do, but it's really, really difficult. I mean, for both guys and girls, for girls having to lift your legs that high, hold it with everything placed, your core work. And for guys, the same thing, but also lifting girls above your head, throwing them, doing all of this while still maintaining your composure and doing all the things you need to do. It's really difficult, all that while doing that on a stage in front of a live audience. It's crazy.
That's partly why I think bar as a workout has really taken off, at least with the ladies. The studios have popped up, and it's utilizing a lot of ballet techniques and stuff to give workouts to ladies who don't want to feel like they don't want to get bigger, but it gets you leaner and sort of stronger. So if you want to try it out, you should give that a try and see how it is. Or just get up from listening to good things and try to stand on your toes. How is it standing on your toes? Does that hurt?
Yes, very.
How long did it take you to learn to do that?
I mean, there's like, you can go on demi-point, like releve, which is like going onto the balls of your feet. And then for girls in point shoes, they have to go on top. I mean...
Again, not fair.
Not at all. I couldn't even imagine doing that. And again, different skill sets. We have to jump, do crazy tricks in the air, and they have to stay on point and balance. So very different things. But I mean, I'll see them like take off their point shoes and they'll have like broken toenails. And I'll be like, oh, absolutely not.
Yeah, it sounds painful. But if you love it, then you keep pursuing it. So you obviously love it, Alexei. So what is the pull? I mean, I know you're young. You're 16, so you feel like you have the rest, and you do. You have the rest of your life ahead of you. But what is it that keeps drawing you in? Because it sounds like it is mind-numbing, attention to detail, repetitive sort of work. I mean, how do you keep the passion alive?
It's definitely difficult, like when you're training day in and day out, but when you get on a stage in front of an audience and you do all of these things that you've been training for and you really just tell a story to the audience and really make them feel like emotions, that in and of itself is all I really need, because that feeling on stage like that is so rewarding and it really gives you the kind of same emotions that the audience feels. And, all of that, it just makes it worth it. Dream
gig. Is it a gig? Do you call it a gig in the ballet world?
Company.
Job. Company.
Yeah.
Variation. I'm learning new language today.
Yes. I mean, I would love to dance in, the Stuttgart Ballet, Berlin, Munich, Dutch National Ballet. Those would be the main ones.
So has musicians have different stages they want to be in? Carnegie Hall, sort of the Lincolns, all these sort of different things. Dancers have that same kind of like pinnacle moments of being on a stage with a specific audience.
Yes, definitely.
So if you had, it would be solo or a duo would be like your golden, a ticket? I don't know, but moment.
So actually it's both, because like in full-length ballets, almost always, if you do a solo, it comes with a pas de deux, which is a duet. And so, like, in a full-length ballet, you'll have all this normally in, like, the third act. You'll have this pas de deux, I think is the correct way to pronounce it. But it's basically...
I'm not going to tell you you're wrong.
Yes, it's a duet between a guy and a girl. They do that, and then the guy does his variation, his solo. The girl does her solo, and then they do together again the coda. And it'll be those 4 sections, and that'll be their duet. So I guess they go hand in hand if you perform.
What does Alexei do other than dance?
I love drawing. I love swimming, playing soccer, doing all those kinds of things, hanging out with my friends, playing chess. Outside of dance, I still have a bunch of like regular hobbies, but of course dance takes priority normally.
How much are you practicing during the day at school when you're in school?
Right now, I go to German school from normally 8:55 to 12:55, and then I'll dance probably from 2:30 to 8 in the evening. And then next year I'll be in the 2 academy levels, so it'll be mostly from like 9 to like 4:30, 5:30.
While you're home, will you pop in and help teach any of the classes at your parents' studio?
Sadly not. I'm going to be here all 3 weeks in Jackson, Mississippi, while my parents... their school resides in Hattiesburg, but they'll be here with me.
What's the name of their school?
South Mississippi Ballet Theater.
All right, there you go. How can we keep up with you, Alexei? If we can't make it to the competition, how can we support you, see what you're doing, all the things?
My main social is on Instagram, ballet_Alexei. That's my main Instagram account. And, of course, I have a YouTube under Alexei Orohovsky and also like a Facebook.
Facebook. Oh, that's for the old folks, right? Rhino, that's for me and Rhino. I feel like, though, we're going to have to get you back for round 2 because you mentioned soccer, and that is Rhino's first love of sports is sort of soccer. So who's your team in soccer?
Probably Manchester City or Real Madrid.
Is that okay, Rhino? Are we okay with that? Like I learned so much about World Cup and all the things this past year, and I'm learning so much too about ballet. We're just getting all cultured here on good things, which I think is really cool. But we are wishing you obviously the best of luck. If we want tickets to the competition, do you know how to get those?
I think on their website, on the usaibc.com website. I could be wrong about that address, but something similar.
Well, I feel confident that we will be talking about Alexei, one gold, our Good Things guest. And so we're giving it to you. And even if not, you can always come back the next time
Of course.
and try again. But we're proud of you regardless. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right. You guys stick with us. We got a little bit more for you coming up next.